Thank you, and good afternoon. I had my first job in retail, aged 14, working for a department store in the UK called Woolworths. I worked in the confectionery counter, bagging, weighing, and selling loose sweets. Woolworths had over 800 stores across the UK and was on nearly every high street. In August 2015, Woolworths filed for bankruptcy and ceased to exist. Unfortunately, that's a story we've been hearing more and more about. It's known as the age of the retail apocalypse. And it's not just in the UK. In the US, some recent examples include Forever 21, a fast fashion clothing company with over 900 stores across the globe. And more recently, Barney's New York, after 90 years of trading, also went into administration. Close to home, companies like JC, Boomerang, and Best of Brands have all recently gone into administration. And the culprit is often seen as online retail, a business I've been working in for the last 15 years. What Amazon have done is taken over 50% of the online retail business in the US. And they've done that with some economic genius. They understood that the more products you have on your website, the more customers will come and buy there. And the more customers you have on their website, the more suppliers will want to sell on your website. On top of that, they've been selling best practice in what it means to be a retailer today. In terms of website usability, mobile site, one-click checkout, delivery and shipping options, customer service, product recommendations, they really are setting what best practice retail is today. They're even working on drone deliveries. So they're working on the lowest prices and the biggest supply. But I'm here today to talk about an alternative. To do so, we're going to need to go back to university. Perfect, as we were at university today. As many of you will know, better than me, this is a basic supply and demand curve. All it's saying is that the higher the price, the more people are willing to supply. At the same time, the higher the price, the less people want to buy. And what retail has pretty much been doing wrong for a little while is putting too much product into the market, meaning they then have to discount it to find people who want to buy at that price. And you'll see that already today or last week. It's Black Friday next week, but people are already going into sales already. But what happens if you put less product into the market than the market wants and a lower price? Economic textbooks would tell you that's a terrible idea. You can make more money by putting more product into the market, or you can make more product and more money by selling it at a higher price. In fact, those same economic textbooks would tell you if you were to do that, all you'd do is create a secondary market. People would buy at the lower price and then sell to those consumers who are willing to pay a higher price in the first place. And in the industry I work in today, that's exactly what's happened. In the part of retail I work in today, there's a $6 billion market, a secondary market, with people buying at their original price and selling for a higher price. $6 billion. That's more than the GDP of Fiji. And that part of retail is sneakers. If you know, you know, but if you don't, maybe you're surprised. But sneakers reselling is big business. This sneaker here was released this year. It's a collaboration between Jordan and a brand called Off-White. It originally retailed at $180. The demand for this sneaker was so high that soon after it sold on the secondary resale markets for $14,000. And it's not just this sneaker. Every week, the major brands release maybe up to 15 sneakers that will sell for more than the original retail price. The rules of retail don't work here. You don't need to have Amazon best practice. You don't need to be the perfect retail store. You're still going to have people queuing up outside your store overnight to try and get their hand on these sneakers. In fact, you actually won't see people queuing up so much outside stores for these sneakers. The demand has got so high that there are things called sneaker riots that unfortunately have happened before. And online, people are paying hundreds of dollars every month for specialist bot software that scans the internet looking for these sneakers to become available. And when they do, they buy them up as fast as they can and then try and resell them. That gives people who aren't playing with bots no chance to get hold of the sneakers. So we run raffles for sneakers instead. We collect your details, your payment information, your delivery information, your shoe size. And we'll collect hundreds of thousands of entries for shoes. And you may have between a 1 and maybe 40% chance of getting hold of those sneakers. And when I say get hold of those sneakers, I mean pay full price retail for those sneakers. But you can be sure it's not the people who get hold of the sneakers and pay for them that complain. It's everybody else who doesn't get a chance to buy those sneakers. So what's going on here? They're great sneakers, but clearly there's something else driving demand for them. There's actually a stock market for sneakers. That same sneaker I talked about before that sold for $14,000 is currently selling for $3,625. Not such good business if you're the person who bought it for $14,000, but still great business if you're the person who bought it for $180. This works like any other stock market. Sellers list their product for how much they're willing to sell, and buyers how much they're willing to buy. If there's a match, they sell. This one resale market has done over $1 billion of sales in the last 12 months. And it's not just sneakers. It's sneakers, it's clothing, it's bags, it's watches. People are making full-time careers out of buying and selling sneakers. People don't just have collections of sneakers anymore, they have portfolios. Recently, an auction with Sotheby's, 100 sneakers went up for sale. It ended up selling for $850,000 for 100 sneakers. As I say, these are great sneakers, but something else must be going on. And to explain that, it's something that Kanye West and the Duchess of Cambridge have in common to me. They've both caused websites I've been working on to crash. Kanye West has a line called Yeezy. He does a collaboration with Adidas on. And I've learned the hard way that if you try and release a sneaker from Kanye West without doing a raffle, your website will crash and you will get an error 404. But the clues to this came to me 10 years ago when I was working with a UK high street fashion brand called Reese on their website. Duchess of Cambridge, the Duchess of Cambridge, or just Kate Middleton as she was known back then, she wore a Reese dress to her engagement photos. And when she wore that dress, when people figured out where it was from, they all came to the Reese website to buy it. We weren't ready for it, and the website crashed, and you saw your error 404 page. So me and the technical team worked all night trying to get the website back up. We were in the server room, plugging and unplugging cables. It was sweaty, it was dark, but eventually, by the morning, we got the website back up and running. Unfortunately, the story then broke that because Kate Middleton had wore a dress, it caused the retailer's website to crash. And that was the real story. That's the story when international and gathered PR headlines around the world. And of course, the website very quickly crashed again. So you saw an error 404 page. You didn't see the Amazon best practice e-commerce retail page. But what happened when we eventually did get the website back up and eventually we got more stock of the dress in? They sold thousands and thousands of the dresses, way more than if the website had functioned in the first place. And this is the key. It's not best practice retail experience. It's creating and understanding consumers' needs and consumers' cognitive biases. And one of those is perceived scarcity. That's what was creating the demand. Turns out that perceived scarcity is one of humans' cognitive biases, or heuristics, or shortcuts, things that we do that seem irrational but help us navigate this complex world we live in. Another classic cognitive bias is anchoring. Whenever you go to a restaurant, take a look at the wine menu. This is from a couple of weeks ago when I went for dinner with my wife. You'll see the most expensive wine, or one of the most expensive wines, is always listed first. That anchors that price, so that when you look at the other prices, which you might have looked independently and seemed expensive, they always seem that, for some reason, a little bit cheaper and good value. And there's good science behind these cognitive biases. When it comes to scarcity, there was a study done with 2 job adverts advertised. For one of the job vacancies, they said limited vacancies available. And when they did the research and they questioned people who applied, the people who saw the advert, it was exactly the same job advert, the people who saw the advert with limited vacancies available, they thought that was a better employer who would pay better and give them better chance for the future. In fact, the impact of scarcity and perceived scarcity has been understood for a while, especially when it comes to markets. Some of you may have heard about the Dutch tulip mania. In the mid-17th century, tulips were fairly new to Europe. And the perceived scarcity drove the price up and up in the Netherlands. At one point, a single tulip could cost 10 times the annual salary of a Dutch worker. Unfortunately for the Dutch tulip market, the bubonic plague happened, meaning there was no one left to try and buy the tulips. Luckily, we don't live with the bubonic plague anymore. So I was looking for some recent examples of scarcity that I'd kind of seen out in the market and in culture. And I was thinking back to Fortnite, just a month or so ago. Fortnite is a computer game, for those of you who don't know. And they took the computer game offline for 2 days in between seasons of their computer game. A computer game created perceived scarcity. By definition, there should be infinite supply of a computer game. But what they did is they put up a blank page in between for 48 hours. And they had hundreds of thousands of kids and some adults staring at a blank screen for 2 days, wondering what was going to happen next. This generated them huge PR and huge amount of anticipation for what was coming next. And so when they did switch the game back on, they had a much, much higher gameplay than they expected. So just like the recent example from before, the 404 page actually generated more interest. So we've talked about retail dying, and we've talked about Amazon winning, and that is definitely happening. But what I've hopefully shown you today is just one example of about how you don't have to play by those rules. You can try and compete on the pure economics of supply and demand, and then you will be competing with Amazon. And good luck. That is a tough business to be in. But there is also space to compete and understand humans' needs, wants, and desires. So I'll give you one final thought, that it's not the death of retail. It's those companies that actually try and do both things not too well. Compete on the economics and compete on humans' needs, wants, and desires. It's the death of the middle. Thank you.